In January 1953, President Eisenhower named Strauss as Presidential Atomic Energy Advisor. Then in July 1953, Eisenhower named Strauss as chairman of the AEC. While Strauss had initially opposed Eisenhower's push for Operation Candor, his view and the administration's goals both evolved, and he endorsed the Atoms for Peace program, which Eisenhower announced in December 1953. Strauss was now one of the best-known advocates of atomic energy for many purposes. In part, he celebrated the promise of peaceful use of atomic energy as part of a conscious effort to divert attention away from the dangers of nuclear warfare. Nevertheless, Strauss, like Eisenhower, did sincerely believe in and hope for the potential of peaceful uses. In 1955, Strauss helped arrange the U.S. participation in the First International Conference on Peaceful Uses of Atomic Energy, held in Geneva. Strauss held Soviet capabilities in high regard, saying after the conference that, in the realm of pure science, the Soviets had astonished us by their achievements. The Russians could be described in no sense as technically backward. Udharan Chinh. In 1954, Strauss predicted that atomic power would make electricity too cheap to meter. Regarded as fanciful even at the time, the quote is now seen as damaging to the industry's credibility. Strauss was possibly referring to Project Sherwood, a secret program to develop power from hydrogen fusion, rather the commonly believed uranium fission reactors. Indeed, on the run-up to a 1958 Geneva Conference on Atomic Power, Strauss offered substantial funding to 3 laboratories for fusion power research. Following the unexpectedly large blast of the Castle Bravo thermonuclear test of March 1954 at Bikini Atoll, there was international concern over the radioactive fallout experienced by residents of nearby Rongelap Atoll and Utirik Atoll and by a Japanese fishing vessel. The AEC initially tried to keep the contamination secret, and then tried to minimize the health dangers of fallout. Voices began to be heard advocating for a ban or limitation on atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons. Strauss himself downplayed dangers from fallout and insisted that it was vital that a program of atmospheric blasts proceed unhindered. However, Strauss also contributed to public fears when, during a March 1954 press conference, he made an impromptu remark that a single Soviet H-bomb could destroy the New York metropolitan area. This statement was heard overseas as well and served to add to what UK Minister of Defence Harold Macmillan termed a panic over the subject. The AEC had commissioned the Project Sunshine report in 1953 to ascertain the impact of radioactive fallout generated from repeated nuclear detonations of greater and greater yield on the world's population. The British asked the AEC for the report, but Strauss resisted giving them anything more than a heavily redacted version, leading to frustration on the part of Prime Minister Winston Churchill and other UK officials. Internal debate ensued over the next several years within the Eisenhower administration over the possibility of an atmospheric test ban with the Soviet Union, with some in favor of trying to arrange one. But Strauss was always one of those implacably opposed. Strauss would continue to minimize the dangers of Bravo fallout to the islanders of the atolls, insisting in his 1962 memoirs that they had been under continuous and competent medical supervision, and that follow-up tests showed them to be in excellent health, and their blood counts were approximately normal. Others in the AEC were equally cavalier. In fact, AEC scientists had seen the islanders as a valuable laboratory case of human exposure. The limited test ban treaty banning atmospheric tests would not be arrived at until 1963. And the U.S. Government engaged in a series of re-evaluations of the health of the islanders and relocation and economic packages to compensate them. Over the next several decades, Strauss and others in the AEC were also dismissive of the dangers Americans faced who were downwind of the Nevada test site. The Sputnik crisis of 1957 led Eisenhower to create the President's Science Advisory Committee. Once that body was in place, Eisenhower began to directly receive a broader selection of scientific information. Strauss lost his ability to control scientists, access to the president, and his influence within the administration began to recede. While Strauss had maintained his hostility towards Anglo-American cooperation on nuclear matters. Since becoming AEC chairman, Sputnik gave impetus to renewed cooperation on this front. Strauss visited Prime Minister Harold Macmillan to give a message from Eisenhower to this effect. And subsequent talks and hearings resulted in the 1958 US-UK Mutual Defence Agreement coming into place. As AEC chairman, Strauss was informed regarding U.S. intelligence findings on the Dimona reactor in Israel. He met with Ernst David Bergman, chairman of the Israel Atomic Energy Commission and a key early force in the Israeli nuclear program, and years later would help Bergman get a visiting fellowship in the United States. While Strauss's thoughts on the Israeli effort to develop nuclear weapons are not documented, his wife later said that he would have been in favor of Israel being able to defend itself.